The Super Nintendo has always been a console that I've had a very special connection with. I know that might seem a bit weird given the fact that I wasn't around during its heyday, but something about it has always managed to fascinate me and resonate with me in a way that many retro consoles simply haven't. This is a system that is capable of so much, has achieved so much, and to this day, it's still just as interesting to talk about as when I originally hit the scene. It will never not be impressive just how fun these games still are, how good these games still look, and how ahead of its time it was in so many areas. But although this console was legendary in just about every area, there's still one aspect of it that manages to be even more revered than even the games themselves: the music. Now, I feel like it's common knowledge at this point that music in games has the ability to mean and represent so many different things to so many different people. It's able to portray so many different emotions and feelings, as well as painting such vivid pictures with its sounds and its composition, on top of adding on to the action currently on screen. And I'll always find it incredibly interesting to see how each console goes about achieving those things, and how well they manage to do so given the limitations. However, SNES music is something interesting, because, whether you realize it or not, you see a lot of these songs everywhere, whether it be in meme videos, or those relaxing VGM playlists, or even just regular videos being used as background music. It's surprisingly very popular nowadays, even more so than when the system was new. There's just so much about how these songs sound and the way that they're composed that manages to still hold up so unusually well. But something that has always astonished me is the fact that many younger people resonate with these soundtracks just as strongly. And they're not like Nintendo enthusiasts like you and I are. No, they're just your regular Gen Z individual who just happens to stumble on these songs by complete accident. It's difficult to explain how it got to this level of popularity, but there's just something about how this console produces sound that manages to capture people's attention. Many of these songs truly speaks to people, even people outside of the entire gaming landscape. It doesn't matter how old they are or whether or not it originally came from a video game. The music itself is enough to get their attention. At worst, they end up appreciating it as just being great music, but at best, they end up seriously vibing with it and connecting to it in an incredibly strong way. But with all this majesty, one question has been in my mind for a couple of years now. Why? Folks, let's be real here. Yoko Shimomura didn't just create a song like Forest Maze by accident. Music on this system is one of the few times that retro video game music truly stands out on its own as just being good music completely on its own merits. I don't even think many of the composers themselves really knew how big of a crowd these songs would eventually draw. And above all else, I just want to understand why music on the system is so big. It's music, so obviously there are no real definitive correct or incorrect answers, but I just want to attempt to figure out that special something about SNES music. I want to explore and find out the magic hidden within each of these tunes, and if I'm being honest, I just want an excuse to listen to all these soundtracks again, and I have absolutely no shame in saying that. So, ladies and gentlemen, nerds, geeks, and all my queer and non-binary peeps, why is SNES music so timeless? I don't know, here's what I found. Now, I decided pretty early on while making this video to look under the hood of the Super Nintendo and do some research to grasp a basic understanding of how the sound system functions in order for it to spit Candy Mountain back at me. I'm not gonna talk about each and every aspect of the sound hardware. I'm definitely not the person to go to for that, and these videos right here can do a much better job explaining it than I ever could. But I mainly want to focus on the areas that really make the magic happen, if that makes any sense. With that being said, it all starts with the two main sound processors, the SPC 700 and the DSP. These are actually located in an entirely separate part of the console, having its own designated area broken up by the cartridge port. Both of these sound processors go about processing the sound in different ways. The SPC has 6 different sound registers, all of which are responsible for things like audio control, audio timing, and having input and output ports to other parts of the system. The DSP, on the other hand, apparently has nearly 100 different registers stored inside it, most of which are fully customizable and have a plethora of different filters and pitches to play around with. It also includes some more fancier registers that enable use of echo, for example, or registers that allow for pitch blending, or even altering the pitch of real-life voices. With the capabilities of these 2 chips, it essentially allows for the composers to accurately get the sounds that they want, with the right pitch and tempo and everything. And the sheer amount of options and customization packed into these 2 chips allows for composers like Setsuya Yamamoto to make the opening theme of Mega Man X in the way that he originally envisioned it. It obviously wasn't without its limitations, and many of these composers still had to creatively work around said limitations in order to make the best sounding song possible. But even still, the composers had so much more freedom than any other console before, and as a result, it's no wonder why these songs have absolutely no problem sounding so modern and so advanced even to this day. One of the beautiful things about video game music, and music in general, is how each musician is able to capture a similar feeling, but in an entirely unique way. I mean, how Koji Kondo expresses excitement and enthusiasm would obviously be a lot different from how Jun Ishikawa expresses it. And given how big the Super Nintendo's library is, it's no surprise that each game has a totally distinct and unique sound. So I figured that since we already know the technical aspect for why these games sound so good, I want to take a look at 4 of the big OSTs, the ones that everyone remembers. These 4 don't necessarily have the most iconic songs out there. Rather, they're the ones that have songs that, to me, sound the best and have been able to reach people outside of the Nintendo/gaming fandom. Because if I'm being honest, for as iconic as Super Mario World or Super Metroid's OSTs are, to me, these 4 games will always be the games I feel do a better job at showing what the sound hardware on the system is truly capable of. I want to see how these soundtracks utilize the 2 sound chips, how well the compositions themselves hold up, and more than anything, I want to gauge the vibe and tone that these games portray, as well as highlight the songs that really sum up what the composers were going for. So, without further padding out of the video, let's dive in. Chrono Trigger is a game that I have next to no real experience with. The game has always had a cult following from what I've gathered, and even though many praise the actual RPG mechanics and the story, the music, like all RPGs, let's be real, has garnered so much attention and acclaim by damn near everyone, and upon listening to his OST for the first time, I think I can safely count myself among those people. Like most RPGs out there, the atmosphere that Yasunori Mitsuda seemed to capture was that element of adventure and the many different feelings that go along exploring such a vast land. However, aside from the big one, which I'll get to later, there's one other track in particular that really captured my attention pretty quickly: Dome 16's Ruin. This was a very interesting one because it's very heavy on percussion and snares, which gives it a very punchy and energetic sound, but the actual composition itself paints a drastically different picture. I mean drastically different. The melody is very dark and somber. It gives off feelings of confusion and stress and fearing the things that could possibly be up ahead. That juxtaposition in how this track is put together is so incredibly fascinating to me. Like, it's rare that you come across a song that's so at odds with itself and portrays 2 different emotions at the exact same time. But I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like that desolate and gloomy vibe that I got from Dome 16's Ruins, I also got from most songs off the soundtrack. Even some of the more happier and joyful ones just have that hint of sadness. Even the names of some of these songs are incredibly moody. Ruined World, Remains of the Factory, A Shot of Crisis, People Who Threw Away Their Will to Live. The whole energy that I'm getting from this game is that it's clinically depressed and it desperately needs a hug. but the fact that so many of these songs have that tone laid over them is incredibly powerful. Even though the vibe that I was able to create and the pictures that I was able to paint for the listener aren't pretty, it's nonetheless extremely vivid, and you get this feeling that even under the best and most peaceful circumstances, there's always a looming sense of dread and fear hanging over you. But given how most of these songs sound, there were still a couple of outliers that used the same tactics to portray feelings on the polar opposite side of the spectrum. Enter the absolutely iconic Corridors of Time. This is one of those songs that has an overwhelming number of things to talk about, but I just want to highlight just how big of a contrast this song is to the rest of the music in this game. Instead of the snares and the synths going against each other, they actually both work in unison to give off a calming and even almost dreamlike feeling. And as opposed to the echo and a cappella being used to create a sense of desperation and hopelessness, thanks to how well the background elements mesh together, it actually ends up portraying feelings of hopefulness and has such an intensely uplifting aura surrounding it. It's honestly the kind of contrast I find to have quite a bit of value, because even with all the doom and gloom going on every other part of the soundtrack, it consequently makes songs like this stand out from the crowd in a much more powerful way. This song is simply just the entire package. It's beautiful, it's well composed, it's emotional, it's uplifting, and it's simply just a one-of-a-kind song. And in a sense, when things around you only seem to be getting worse and more harsher and brutal, this song acts as a warm reminder that everything is gonna be alright, and that even in the darkest of times, things will always be getting better. And it's for that reason why this song, as well as this entire soundtrack, remains so beloved by millions of people. Now, jumping from one JRPG that I haven't played to another, Earthbound has been a game that seemed to take on a second life as of late. What was once an obscure relic of the Super Nintendo has gone on to become a game that has not only received a massive following, but has very, very infamously been integrated into meme and internet culture. And if you couldn't already tell, the music played a monumental role as to why. Earthbound's music was very abstract and incredibly bizarre. The melodies were all over the place, the sounds were very outlandish and just plain strange, and the music altogether just painted a very surreal and uncanny atmosphere, totally unique from any other soundtrack I've ever heard. But let's be real here, Keiji Suzuki and Hirokazu Tanaka knew exactly what they were doing when putting these songs together. First and foremost, the surreal nature of these songs is even further proof of just how much of a audio powerhouse the two sound processors are. I mean, half the sounds that these songs used I didn't even know the Super Nintendo could make, and with just how many pitches and filters that they used to make these songs, I can look past most of the weirdness just to appreciate the soundtrack purely for how impressive it is from a technical standpoint. But secondly, I don't think I'm alone in saying that the bizarre nature of this soundtrack manages to give it a very odd sense of charm. There's a certain beauty to how strange and weird everything sounds. These songs don't really portray emotions or feelings in a traditional way, and the beauty of that is that these songs could represent pretty much anything to pretty much anyone. And believe me, the internet definitely used that part to its advantage, for better or worse, because this soundtrack has gotten around quite a bit over the years, and the reason lies with just how creative people can be with how they go about using these songs. And nowhere is this more apparent than with the big one, Sanctuary Garden. You know, the more that I look at it, Sanctuary Garden is pretty much all of Earthbound's music summed up into one song. Like every track, it uses very strange sounds, and the melody itself is very sporadic, shifting and changing whenever it feels like it. But I feel like because of that, the song is able to be used in a variety of different ways. It constantly shifts from being a very chill, bass-heavy song of relaxation to something more classically bizarre and odd. It's such a heavy contrast that's allowed people's imagination to run wild with how they go about using this theme. You can use it as a song to set a more relaxing and laid-back tone, or you can use it for that. It's a very wacky song, a song that at face value doesn't really make much sense, but it has such a layer of versatility and complexity that remains so interesting. I think that's the word that I would use to describe this soundtrack, because it's unlike anything you've ever heard before, but behind all the surrealism is something that I feel that most people can get something out of. And above all else, remains a very interesting side of the Super Nintendo's music library. DKC 1, 2, and 3. Now, this really shouldn't be a surprise to any of you. I mean, unless you're new, which in that case, hello, my name is Young Average Joe, Yacht for short. I like Donkey Kong Country. The games themselves are absolute classics, some of my personal favorites of all time. And even when you completely disregard the quality of these games, there's just something about how they look, and obviously how they sound, that gives the series its own distinct charm and atmosphere that's in both ways more immersive and mesmerizing than either of its contemporaries. Now, I've already talked about what made the music in the first game so good, but this time around, I'm gonna look at all of them, because to me, they're all examples of Super Nintendo music at its absolute peak. David Wiseman. I mean, I know I've already mentioned him a couple of times on this channel, but I simply can't get enough of this man's work. Everything he touches sounds so godly. But for as much as I absolutely adore him, obviously one man couldn't possibly make 3 amazing soundtracks in a row without at least a little bit of help. Enter Evelyn Novakovic and Robin Beeland, who would work alongside him, and although the various styles that they bring to the series tend to be more controversial to some, I for one massively welcome them, as it gives each of these soundtracks their own distinct sound, as well as allowing them to create their own atmosphere. DKC1 was where all 3 of them worked together, and as a result, it by far had the most variety of sounds out of the entire trilogy. One track would be upbeat and bombastic, but the one directly after could be a lot more slower and be filled with more ambience. It covers a much wider variety of moods, and as a result, it feels the most diverse in terms of its sound as well as its tone. All around, a really good first effort from all 3 here. But the sequel, however, DKC2, is universally considered to have the best soundtrack on the entire system, as well as just one of the best video game soundtracks, period. Wise was the main composer for this one, and he generally went with a more fictitious and cinematic angle. The compositions were incredibly imaginative, and the sounds painted such a vivid picture in your mind that really strives to take you away to another world. But it's also not afraid to emphasize tension and danger, really keep you on edge as you listen. It's all around a very well put together OST. Pretty easy to see how it got its reputation. But DKC3, on the other hand, almost entirely being composed by Evelyn Novakovic, dives headfirst into the ambience. It uses a lot of its sound to really immerse you and encapsulate you into its world. These tones were generally a lot darker, and the sounds are a lot more deeper pitched, and had a much larger sense of atmosphere than any of the previous 2. I know not many people are the most fond of this direction, but it's honestly one that I've appreciated even more as time has went on. It's a different kind of Donkey Kong soundtrack, one that probably shouldn't even be considered as such, but that doesn't stop it from creating a more natural sounding and ambience-filled world that still manages to have its own pleasant vibe. Really, you can't go wrong with any of these 3 OSTs. They're all absolutely fantastic, and I could talk about each and every single one of them in depth, literally all day if I wanted to. However, for as much as I love these soundtracks and pretty much every song found within them, picking the big song of the 3 was incredibly easy. I mean it when I say that I love Life in the Mines, Rock Face Rumble, Forest Interlude, Snaky Shanty, Jib Jig, and all those songs, but in terms of sheer impact and importance, you really can't compare any of them to the masterpiece that is Sticker Bush Symphony. This is such a powerful, powerful song, touching the hearts of so many people, including yours truly. This was off of the DKC2 soundtrack, so it already has that abstract and fictitious sound, and David Wise goes all in with this motif. The sounds and the melodies work together beautifully to create this soft and mellow vibe, but it also has this element of vastness and endlessness, portraying a very safe and comfortable atmosphere. It's no surprise that so many people listen to this song during some of the more difficult times in their lives and use it to just relax and calm down. Because similarly to Corridors of Time, Sticker Bush Symphony is a song about providing a comforting atmosphere. It's a song that allows its listeners to just escape into a world that's not as cruel or unfair as their own. I mean, some of the comments on these videos are incredibly heartfelt and earnest. I don't want to show any, obviously, because they can be pretty personal, but just the fact that people are able to be so open while listening to this song speaks volumes to the type of atmosphere and vibe that it gives off. Everybody can find something special and meaningful in this song. And it's because of that reason why this song truly remains a work of art. Now again, this also shouldn't be that big of a shocker. Again, unless you're new, which in that case, hello there, I'm Yash. I kinda have a thing for Mega Man. The soundtracks to many of these games has always garnered a ton of praise, and is something that even the worstest of the worst always manages to deliver on. However, I think I could say with absolute confidence that of all the OSTs of all the different Mega Man series, none of these soundtracks resonated with me more than the one found in Mega Man in Bass, of all games. I'm not gonna bother hiding anything, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. Mega Man Bass has my favorite Mega Man soundtrack of all time and is one of, if not my favorite gaming soundtrack, period. I know, very, very bold statements to make, especially for someone who hasn't even played the game before. Mega Man Bass is the only classic Mega Man game that I've yet to fully play, and although I've been getting very mixed signals for whether or not I should do so, I've always been a massive fan of the soundtrack. It was love at first sight. Or listen, rather. It's just the amount of variety of the compositions, how advanced and intricate the entire game sounds, how this game goes about portraying so many different emotions and feelings, and it's just absolutely nailing each and every single one of them on the head, like, I just love this soundtrack so much, man. It's perfect in damn near every way. It pushes the two sound chips to their absolute breaking point, given the fact that this game came out around the time where the whole system was on its deathbed in 1998, and I just don't know, there's something about it that just makes my eardrums so giddy. And god, I don't know where to even begin picking the big song in this game. And even though that's partly due to the fact that 95% of this OST is filled with straight bangers, it's also because Mega Man Bass's OST isn't really held in the same regard as the other three that I've talked about. There's not that one song that everybody knows and loves, nor is there a song that's really managed to reach people outside of the gaming fandom. So I'm gonna cheat. Look, alright, it's my video, it's my channel, so I get to do whatever I want. And for this game, I'm just gonna go ahead and list some of my favorite tracks from the soundtrack because my urge to gush about this OST is too damn strong. Sound good to you? Hope so, cause that's what's happening. Here we go. Burman's theme is so damn happy, the composition is very bouncy and playful, and man, the echo in this song really brings a layer of innocence, as well as just chill and calming vibes, all of which never ceasing to make me smile every time I listen to it. The museum theme is a fantastic way to start out this OST. Again, it's very bass heavy, but it still has this aura of wonder and curiosity. It portrays feelings of excitement as you dive headfirst into this new adventure, while also having a very low stakes energy and it's just a bop all the way through. I mean, come on. Tengu Man's theme is so friggin' chill. Like, I know it could be mistaken for elevator music, but I do not care in the slightest. The bass works so well with the synths to create such a relaxing atmosphere, and it's such a slow and easygoing song that even manages to invoke a sort of reminiscent feeling in a sense. But King's theme? Oh my bro, this song is so raw! Like no other castle theme in any other Mega Man game has ever sounded so epic and climactic. The song forebodes the fact that you're nearing the end of the game, and it makes damn sure that you feel intimidated and threatened. It paints such a threatening picture with all of its loud synths and snares, and creates such an intense vibe as you trek your way through the end of the game. But if I did have to pick my favorite theme from this game's soundtrack, for as amazing as every other part of the soundtrack is, it would have to be Cold Man's theme. This song speaks to me. It speaks to me in a way that very little gaming music, or even music in general, could. Its main composition paints a very dark and somber picture. It portrays feelings of sadness and confusion and hopelessness, but I feel like that's the very thing that's allowed me to have such a strong connection to it. Its soft and dim sound has always been something I've managed to just vibe with. Sometimes it's good to just have a song that expresses just how down in the dumps you are, allowing you to form a very close and unique bond with it. But man, at the halfway point where all the guitars come in and plays a riff that has such an intensely uplifting energy to it, totally and completely caught me off guard my first time. Yes, it's very much a sad song, but it's also a song about hope and ambition and keeping your head held up high, even in the most dreadful of circumstances. It manages to tell such an emotional story with its sounds, and the fact that it was able to do that so effectively makes this one of my favorite pieces of music in anything ever. I love it to pieces, like I do with this entire soundtrack, like I do with the Super Nintendo music library in its entirety. You know, there are some retro consoles out there that happen to produce some incredible music that goes on to shape generations and become anthems for their respective player base. Even some of the music nowadays can be unbelievably grand and in many ways are comparable to many movies and cinematic thrillers. But even with all that, there's simply just no other console that manages to impress me with its sound quite like the Super Nintendo. Everyone has a song off of one of these soundtracks that truly speaks to them, that emphasizes an emotion so well and paints such a vivid picture in the listener's mind that truly manages to just stick with you. The music that helps people get through the day, or even helps them make it to the next one. And like I said earlier, even if these songs weren't on the soundtrack for Earthbound or Donkey Kong Country 2, they would still hit just as strongly because of how good these songs are entirely on their own. I really am just kinda running out of good things to say about it, but the Super Nintendo is something that we all cherish. It's something that holds so much significance in the gaming community. And even if you're not into video games, this system has some absolutely legendary pieces of music, and features something that satisfies pretty much everyone's musical tastes, and has the ability to sound so good even in today's climate while still carrying such a sentimental value that could still be felt by even younger generations of people. And that right there is the reason why SNES music remains so timeless. Actually, no. Never mind. This whole video is a complete waste. Everyone knows that the music on the system is timeless because it doesn't allow you to play this soundtrack on it. Stupid.